present. And as Bonnie's indicated, there will be changes before we actually finalize it and have public hearings. So Bonnie, the question I have is the difference between your revenue projections and our revenue spending is only a difference. So we balance the budget is within 200,000.
No, that's just what you're looking at is the difference from 24 to 23.
Okay.
So if you look in the largest report that you have, and then the first page and a half is on department comparisons, and then it goes into revenue. It looks like this.
Okay.
It's the biggest
Yep, show me where
grouping.
that's at.
So,
Okay, I was able to get the sound up, so we are streaming again, and sorry it took so long to figure out what was wrong. but
Okay, thank you, Kay.
I just posted it everywhere, but it wasn't working. Take it down. I'm not, it's too bad. Okay, I'm going to try it right.
Working now.
I can turn it back off.
I'll at least let the commission, or the employees know.
Okay.
so,
So where's that figure with it, whether we balanced the difference?
so I'm asking you to adopt a balanced budget right
Yes.
now. So I'm going to show you how I balanced it. If
Yes,
you- If
okay.
we turn to page 2 on the general fund comparison. Can you find it?
This one?
Yeah. It starts with, the first page starts with the
This one?
commission on the top.
Okay,
Okay, so then it starts with revenue,
yes.
this dark bar, and then, so it goes through each revenue type, or source, and then if you go down to the bottom, so on the very last page,
Is that 18.3 and 18.5?
so you're still comparing, or the first column is still the 23 budget, the second column is the 24 budget.
24?
But
How
in
does
the-
that 24 compare to our revenue
So the
projection?
24 budget, the column on the right, there's this category called contributions prior year fund. It's in the transfer section of the budget, and so it's towards the end, and it's $1,023,730 of prior year fund.
Okay.
The increase looks like it's a high increase, but we didn't transfer necessarily from prior year fund. In 2023, we have a budgeted transfer to transfer LATCF funds to offset. So that's how we balance, but it's still, the transfer is still ultimately less than it was in 2023, the 24 transfer.
How much less?
I know it would hit 2 million, so it's substantially less. I've been a little more aggressive, less conservative on the revenue. So that's
we're-
why I gave
We're
you,
near $1 million is where we're at?
yeah.
Okay,
So, that's why I gave you the revenue breakdown, so you can look it over.
so we've come closer to balancing than we have the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep,
Okay, that's what I need to know.
yep. So if you want to take a look at the revenue, there's a couple things in here that we're benefiting from, and that's sales tax is quite a bit higher. Property tax is the same. And the other thing that is interest. So,
Which is significantly
it
higher.
is significantly higher.
If
So
you've noticed.
if something changed mid-year, we would want to think about an amendment. So,
Okay. Anything else, or
do you have any questions?
questions to the commission?
Do we want to do you want to look at anything else?
You got questions, discussion? Well, I can just say this is tentative. We've already had discussions of you mentioned on things we maybe missed and things we need to adjust. I think the commission has a great interest in balancing our budget as well as possible and allowing some growth and other things that we're getting in our county. We anticipate some growth in revenues and other stuff. So to the commission, any comments or suggestions or any particular things that you might want to discuss?
I just have a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead, Vicki.
I was comparing the '24 budget with this year's budget on special projects, and I've noticed it, for '24, we've gone down quite a bit, and then in capital projects, we've also gone down quite a bit.
Right.
So we're going to be okay, though, with all those projects.
Yeah, so I can, and we do have other budget work meeting schedules, and that was the two things on the agenda, is to go through those and make sure that's what you want it to look like. Because we only have, the only thing we have coming out of Latch in special projects is the Agri Park. That's the only project. It's gone down because also ARPA is in a separate department within special projects. We're looking to have that spent by June 1st, because it has to be spent by this year, and so departments are asked to either have it under contract or spent by June 1st, and then we're going to meet, and then possibly reallocate that. So that funding is coming to an end, and that's in special projects, so you would see a decrease on that. Yeah, and really, the Latch, we budgeted more in 2023 than we did 24 because of that transfer, so. And capital projects, there was less. And we went through those, all the ones that the board has already approved are plugged into separately to capital projects. They're not huge projects. One of the biggest ones was $100,000 for the Notch Peak Communication Tower. In 2023 budget, as we spoke about before, there was a capital outlay within department budgets. That spend changed. It's all been plugged into capital projects. So departments will see that there is no longer capital outlay account numbers used within their departments. So if most of them that I was concerned about, I talked to the assessor's office, and they have included their software in their budget ask. If the software is specific to the department, there's that one, or a golf course, it's in the department. If it's software such as property tax software that's used by every office in this building, for example, it's in the capital budget, as software is allowed to be capitalized under GASB. So those are some of the changes. So.
Commissioner Johnson, do you have any more questions? How much do we have in capital for last year? and
For
this
what?
year? Comparison in capital.
It's in my orange
We have
folder. Let me
sufficient.
grab it.
We have sufficient.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we need to, at what point? We have no requirement to keep a certain amount in there, do we? I mean, that's basically it.
No, you should have a general plan for what it's,
Federal plan.
what it's to be for, and it's been there to maintain infrastructure. So, I've got it right here.
If I remember, we got about the same we had last year.
Yeah, it's right around 10 million.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Any more discussions, or, like I say, we will spend several days meeting to finalize the budget in the near future in this next coming weeks.
I appreciate all the time that Bonnie and her office is put into this, and then all the departments have also took time to get their budgets done, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much.
The sheriff is on his way. He meant to be on time.
I didn't hear you.
I said the sheriff is on his way.
Okay. If you have no more discussion, or I need a motion to approve our tentative budget that's been presented to us.
Make a motion to approve the tentative budget.
I second that motion.
I have a motion to approve the tentative budget for 2024, and a second. Any discussion to that? Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes. We can go back in, Pat? We
We're back to our usual behind schedule.
we good? Thank you, everybody, for tolerating us for a little while, I guess, and let's go ahead and get cleaned up here, and then we will go back into our 10:40 schedule just a minute after we get things done here.
And again, as we're going to be going into some public meetings, for all of you that are here, please make sure that you have written your name legibly so that I can read it for the roll.
Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed. We'll go back to our item. On the 10:40, I need a motion that we enter a public hearing.
I make a motion to enter a public hearing.
I second that motion.
Motion that we enter a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment regarding the possible transfer of real property to Fillmore City. I have a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, we are in a public hearing for any of you that want to come forward and comment on, we had a presentation last week that we have a small sliver of property that they're going to expand the fire station, and we are going to transfer that property to the city. Does anybody from the city want to come and comment on it, or I think we're all clear. Dennis, anybody? We good? Anybody in the public? Seeing none, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Discussion of that motion. No discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public hearing is closed. Now back to the board. Discussion possible transfer of real property of Fillmore City. Do you have any questions, or I need a motion that we proceed?
I think it's a good thing to do.
Okay,
I make a motion that we proceed with the transfer of the real property to Fillmore City.
I have a motion and
I second that
a
motion.
second. Discussion, I'm in a Pat, do you want to tell us what that entails, the sliver of ground? Just explain so we have it on record.
I'll just prepare a deed and give it to Commissioner Riper's signature based on his approval, and we'll get it recorded and get it checked.
It's just a little teeny bit, isn't it?
I mean, you may be confusing with a little sliver that was previously conveyed
Yeah,
to
okay.
the landowner. It's not nothing, but it's not something that the county really
Yeah.
ought to retain any interest in.
Okay.
It should go to the city.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, motion passes. To the 10:45, we need a motion to enter a public hearing.
I make a motion that we enter public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we enter a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comment on a zoning ordinance text amendment, application number Z-2020-058, amending the table of uses and accompanying use definitions located in Title 10, Chapter 25, Appendix A of the Millard County zoning ordinance to allow open outdoor storage as a P1 permitted use in the highway commercial zoning district. We now have an open public hearing, so I'm going to go to Adam, and you might explain this, and then anyone else in the audience that would like to come forth and comment, you want to explain, Adam?
Thank you, Commissioners. So the applicant apologizes they are not able to be present today. They had some other family obligations and wanted to be present but were unable. So what the proposed change consists of is within our county zoning ordinance, we use a matrix, and it consists of the different zoning districts and then the allowed uses within each zoning district. And among those definitions, if something is not explicitly spelled out and the process delineated for permitting, then it becomes a prohibited use. And so the X's on our table are things that are not allowed. Currently, in the light industrial zone, the highway commercial zone, you've got an X where storage, open and outdoor, which consists of the storage of goods or product in an open, unenclosed area, including but not limited to automotive, truck, recreational vehicle, trailer, and manufactured home sales, lots, repair yards, open storage areas, and all similar outside display and storage areas of goods, materials, equipment, and vehicles, and not associated with any other use or as an accessory use to an approved use, sorry to put that all out, that it's prohibited. And so the applicant has sought for a rezoning of property and was granted some rezoning that allows them to have storage units constructed, but they are not allowed to have open storage of RVs on the property. And that's a very popular use to store RVs, but it's a different use. It's one that's not allowed. And they've asked that that be modified to allow them to store RVs on the property. Currently, in that zoning district, it's not allowed. They had proposed that it be changed to allowed at a P1 level. A P1 is something that's allowed with a permit at the planning administrator level, which is just administrative, it's my level. Someone can walk in, fill out a piece of paper, and be granted the permit. The Planning Commission made a recommendation after also a public hearing and discussion that the table be modified to allow for open and outdoor storage, but that it be done at the Planning Commission level, which is a C-1. So it's actually a little bit more restrictive than what was applied for. So the applicant has requested that it be a P1 on the table, which would allow them to store RVs within the site. And the Planning Commission has suggested that perhaps might be better at a C1 level. Again, that's with, I think I misspoke earlier and said light industrial, but it's actually within the highway commercial zoning district.
So what's the two, P1 and what's the other designation?
C1.
C1.
Those are the two designations that
Okay.
were discussed. The proposed,
C1 will allow them just to
the lowest level,
go to the planning and zoning still, even if it's
yeah,
acceptable. P1 will allow them just to do it.
yes, and in
By
some
approval of
instances,
Administrator.
right, but a C1 would require them to go to the planning commission. And the reason for that, the basis of the discussion, or at least the discussion centered on that if there were something site-specific that needed to be addressed, a condition could be imposed to address that. Whereas at a P1 level, there's not the ability to impose additional conditions.
Okay, continue. We'll go back for our questions. We're in a public hearing, so continue, Adam. Is there any more information?
That's really the,
Okay, we are in a public hearing for the purpose of discussing this change to the ordinance. Anybody in the public have any opinions or want to come forward? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, that we close the public hearing. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is closed. Now we'll go back to commission for discussion.
I think we should.
Trevor, do you have any discussion? Trevor or
Go
Vicky?
ahead, Vicki.
I think we should do it as a C1 instead of a P1. I think that we want planning and zoning to have a little bit of say in what actually takes place there.
Okay, I would support the other. I don't know how much work planning and zoning wants. It seems like to me that the administrator is more of a simple, so, but anyway, I'm open to, I would generally support a P1. I think it saves the planning and zoning. With the development we have in this county, they have a lot of stuff on their table. I don't know if they need to do this.
Highway commercial property is there, I know we discussed earlier, but that was like.
On the light industrial. Yeah, the highway commercial, we do have a so down at Cove Fort, around the gas station area, there's several parcels. As you're leaving Delta and going north of Delta along Highway 6, there's a pretty good stretch of it. And then also going east towards Oak City from Delta. And then close to Fillmore, there's just a very little bit. It is mostly limited to right along the highways. Typically, that has just been done at request, not request, but that's been done through pretty limited application where people have sought to have that zone. It's the same zoning that would allow for hotels or motels or other commercial uses. It is typically a fairly visible corridor. It's always right along the highway that they would have it. And I think perhaps that might have been some of the intent, is to mitigate any visible impacts as people are coming in and out of our communities.
Let me go ahead and clarify so we have it on the minutes. We're discussion and possible adoption of ordinance 23-10-31A, an ordinance amending the table of uses and accompanying use definitions located in Title 10, Chapter 25, Appendix A of the Millard County zoning ordinance to allow open outdoor storage and in what's stated here as a P1 permitted use in the highway commercial zoning district. If we want to see one, then we'll have to do an amendment to what's been proposed here.
I believe that can actually just be done at this level. Pat, they've asked that there be a P1.
They've asked, in this, it's a
A
P1.
C1 would be more restrictive than what was proposed on a change.
Correct. Yeah, C1 requires some approval, P1 is just permitted.
So as far as if they were to make that change, if the commissioners were to opt to do that as a more restrictive level than what had been requested, that's not a new permit. That would simply be a decision at this body.
They can make that decision.
Between the P1 and the C1, okay.
Yep.
To the commission, motions, discussion.
So storage units currently are C1, and that's the existing use. And I think they were looking just at being comparable in visual impact potentially. But
They're requesting a P1, they are currently a C1.
No, there's nothing right now.
Okay,
Enclosed storage units are C1, but,
okay.
Open.
Or C1s, open ones.
and these guys are wanting to do open storage with P1, but I think we should do it as C1.
To the commission,
So if we want to adopt this, do we just say adopt the ordinance, but as a C1?
You said with adopt the planning commission recommendation with respect to the ordinance. The ordinance, the adopting language in the ordinance just references
the table.
The table that's prepared by the planning department, so the ordinance itself is broad enough to cover either one. You just need to state in your motion specifically whether you're moving to adopt the
I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance 23-10-31A as a C1 permitted use.
I second that motion.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as a P1, as a C1 use. Any further discussion to that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Is that a
opposed? I would say
On the ordinance.
need to be a roll call. I would say no, I'd rather adopt it as a P1, but motion passes. Roll call vote.
Also, roll call vote on ordinance 23-10-31A as discussed.
Yes.
Yes.
No. On to the next item, public hearing for the purpose of opening budgets for the 2023 year. I need a motion to enter a public hearing.
I make a motion to enter public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, to enter a public hearing for the purpose of opening budgets for the 2023 year, that's this year closing. To amend, we have some changes we need to move around, senior nutrition, rodeo, planning, IGP grants, and strike force. All funds and budgets may be considered as necessary. I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, Bonnie, we'll turn some time over to you to discuss the changes that we need to make within the budget to get the budget done this year.
So I sent this out to you Friday, but there have been just a couple of changes. There's no longer a need to amend the rodeo budget.
So the rodeo's off, okay?
Yep. And what's been added is the computer hardware in capital funds for $15,000. Richard, our IT person, explained that these are needed because of the 220 voltage that's required. It's not the most expensive ones because we already have the generator backup that they can hook onto. So it cut the cost by like half. So, and he said he'd like to get them in this year if possible. So.
Okay, we're in a public hearing. Is there any comments or suggestions or any information that any of the public needs for a public hearing? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close public hearing.
I second that motion.
I have a motion, a second, we close the public hearing. Any discussion to that? Call a vote, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, now we're back to the commission for possible.
Can I add something here?
Yes, you can.
These resolutions were misnumbered on the agenda. They just continued off of the resolutions that were adopted by the RDA board. So I've corrected them on the resolutions, but so this one will just be 23-10-31. No letter.
Okay. So we're now back to commission discussion, possible approval of resolution 23-10-31, correct? Resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Millard County, Utah, opening budgets for the 2023 year and for senior nutrition, rodeo's been crossed out, planning, IGP, grant, and strike force. All other funds may be considered necessary. Discussion by the commission or questions that you have. There's a few others in here also, so. Do you want any further explanation, or Bonnie, do you have any further comments?
You talked about the
Most of these
nutrition.
have been discussed previously, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
for some time, the nutrition costs for meal delivery at the senior center, planning and zoning, there was a spreadsheet error when it was extracted. Golf course is kind of different. They're closing out the pro shop credits from prior years. You can't carry over credit for multiple years. It has to be used in the current year. So that's, as a result, costing a little bit more to clear those out by the end of the year.
Did we get the details on CERT?
Yes, they were emailed, so this is to amend the 23 CERT request. So the 23 was $2,740, and that's in special projects. The IGP grant that was awarded through CUPH.
Just some information on IGP. We did some grants. These are grants or waivers from participation. If you're not aware, we have to open the budget to take money out, and we have to open the budget to put money in. So this is actually opening the budget to put a grant in to provide these waivers, so.
Right, so that's a pass-through funding source. The next one is Strike Force. It's also pass-through. It's $8,775. It's eShare DOJ forfeiture, and then the computer hardware that I spoke of earlier, so.
Okay, discussion by the commission. I need a motion or any questions or a motion to approve or disapprove or?
I make a motion that we approve these budget amendments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion the motion. Bonnie, do you want to describe it? Trevor, you might. You're in Sixth County. In this is to supplement our aging program, which has significantly gone up this year during the part of the year, and it will be significantly elevated. This is our senior centers and our Meals on Wheels. Trevor, do you have any comments about what's happening with that budget and why?
Ours went up, out of the 6 counties, ours went up the most, or maybe the second most. A lot of it has to do with, we have 3 centers that we provide Meals on Wheels from, where a lot of counties only have 1. And so a lot of this money is just going to the labor cost to prepare and distribute these meals in our county, just because of how spread out we are and the number of centers we have. That's the reason ours went up significantly. So.
That's been a significant increase over past years. We work with the 6 County Association to provide those services, because it would be very difficult as a single county for us to provide them. So, any more discussion to the motion? If not, all in favor that we approve these indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any, pardon? Do we need roll call vote?
I should, yes, we didn't. I make a motion we approve the resolution 23-10-
Well, we didn't have a motion? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I said amendments.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Do we need a roll call? Yes, go ahead.
I'll call for a roll call vote on resolution 23-10-31 as discussed. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Yes. Is it right here? I might. Can't keep track of all these. Okay. Need a motion to open a public hearing.
Make a motion that we go into a public hearing.
I second that motion.
A motion that we enter public hearing for the purpose of receiving comment on C2 conditional use permit applications Z-2023-006 for solar energy systems major at approximately 7500 North Jones Road, Delta, Intermountain Solar Plant LLC applicant. I have a motion to enter a public hearing in a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're now in a public hearing, so we'd like to welcome you who are here to comment from the public or any others, and we'll turn the time to you. If you'll please state your name and go ahead and give us your comments.
Before you do that, I think I saw a few people come in who have not signed our roll. I do need you to come up and make sure that printed on our roll. Because you take over public meetings. So if you're not on there, please don't have to do so now.
Are you going to start, Susan?
I sure am.
Go
Good
ahead,
morning.
state your name for the record.
And good morning. I am Susan Fernandez, and I'm from the ACES Delta site.
Yes.
And, yeah, so I just wanted to make a comment on this, that we do have a coordination agreement with Intermountain Solar that we signed in 2019, and the purpose of that was to make sure that our projects don't impact each other in a way that would impede. And so we don't see any current issues with the way that they have the Gentile line as it's currently proposed. What we would ask the commission is that if, and Intermountain Solar, that if anything changes along those lines, that we continue to collaborate together to make sure that our plans are not impacted negatively at the ACES Delta site. And I've submitted documents last night via email, and also to Adam Richards, who has a copy of our letter stating these.
I think, at least I seen them. I did not get them read. So,
You did not?
I did not get them read,
You
no.
got him, he didn't read.
Oh, okay.
Trevor made me read them.
I read it.
Yeah, and that's how we wanted to state it. We don't see any current issues with their Gentile line. at
That's
this
what I
point.
assumed it said, but,
Yes. So thank you.
okay. Any more comments? Go ahead, state your name and,
My name is Erin Bebo. I'm with 174 Power Global. We just wanted to share some information about the project ahead of your discussion. So I handed out a presentation that we put together just to give you information about the project, much of which you might already have. So I'm just going to highlight just a couple of notes on the presentation. so
okay,
that
go ahead.
So we're
Time's yours.
a developer, owner, and operator of utility-scale solar projects. We are currently have over 1.5 gigawatts of projects in construction and operation, and we're pursuing development of approximately 1,000 megawatts in Utah. The project that you're reviewing today, the Intermountain Solar Project, is 285 megawatts of PV and battery energy storage system on 1,600 acres of private land in Millard County. It does include a Gentile that was mentioned. The access will be off of North Jones Road, which will remain open during construction. The construction timeline that we're looking at will be to start construction in Q1 of 2026, with commercial operation date in the second quarter of 2027. The components for the solar project will include solar arrays, batteries, a substation, an operation and maintenance facility, collection lines, access roads, and temporary construction areas. Provided just a little bit more information on the next page that I won't go through in detail of the project components, but we did want to highlight that the battery energy storage system will include a self-contained fire detection and suppression system, just of note. The project is in alignment with the Millard County General Plan, and again, I won't go through the details of each of these bullets to save you some time today, but we are sited on lands designated for solar development in range and forest with the Gentile and heavy industrial land. It'll be designed and built to all local, state, and federal building codes, and we are seeking all applicable permits for the project. Supporting agreements and plans that we have discussed specifically with the Planning Commission include crossing agreements, a road agreement with the county, a dust plan, reclamation plan, electrical standards, which we always follow, FAA review, and then coordination with the county on a housing strategy during construction, just to name a few. We provided just an example of a solar project that is established in Millard County, the Pavant Solar Project, which you are probably all familiar with. This was developed by UE, which is a global market leader in the utility scale solar industry, and it was commissioned in 2015. For project and community benefits, we are dedicated to community values throughout development and building and operation stages of our projects. We strictly abide by county, state, fire district, and federal regulations for all of our projects. This is a low-impact development. Solar projects can be returned to agricultural use after the life of the project, which is a benefit. We always employ best management practices. And site surveys by technical experts will be implemented as well to evaluate potential changes and avoid impacts on site. The site consists of rangeland with soils that are not prime farmland. We will be conducting cultural surveys, biological surveys, wetland delineations, and other surveys necessary on site. And in addition, the site is not located in a key wildlife area, and as mentioned, we will be submitting to FAA for review. So those are just some of the project highlights we wanted to share today. We're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we are in a public hearing, so we'll proceed with the public hearing, and then we'll come back to the commission for questions. Before we go out of public hearing, is there anyone else? And Adam, I'm going to give you a chance to comment if you'd like. If you don't, you can wait till we get back in commission meeting. Is there anybody in the public who'd like, go ahead, come up and ask your questions and express, if you'd give your name, please, for the record, and then go ahead.
My name is Landon Kessler. I am also working with this company, Power Global 174, and have been doing so for several years, and I would like to also advocate on their behalf for the exact same reasons. They're worth billions, they do a great job, and I believe they will bring wonderful product to the county that will bring a large revenue stream for the county, and as I understand it, there'll be very little impact, very little downside, and I would like, yeah. I mean, concerning this, is that said and done?
What's that?
The discussing changing the current, what's it called? The tax increment participation agreement?
We haven't had any discussion at all.
Okay, we'll save that for later then.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anybody else, any other comments from, okay, I'll entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close public hearing.
I second that
I
motion.
have a motion and a second that we close the public hearing. Any discussion of that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is closed. We're back to discussion by the commission, discussion and possible approval of a C2, this is for the conditional use permit, application Z-2023-006 for a solar energy system major at approximately 7500 North Delta. And I do have a question. Adam, go ahead, and maybe I'll have a question. You can include this in your question.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that I didn't see is some form of mitigation if in the future of an agreement on whose responsibility it would be in case the sun quits shining at some point in time. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but anyway, I think that it would be behoove us to make sure in these instances we have mitigation so that whose responsibility and what to clean it up and take care of it and return it. I know you mentioned in your comments it could be returned to agriculture, which it could, but we need to be clear on how that's going to happen and make sure that it's not the county's responsibility particularly or that landowner. So you might include that in any discussions you have.
Sure, I'll cover that gladly. So there's the saying, good fences make good neighbors, and so this is going to seem a little onerous, but we actually had quite a few conditions that were presented to the Planning Commission for consideration, and in addition to the conditions that were presented and discussed, several additional conditions were proposed by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommendation was that this application be favorably, to be approved. And then I'm just going to go through some of the conditions. Again, these are all written out, so I'm going to go down quickly through them and then add the additional conditions that they requested or that they suggested for you to consider. So, pause me if you want me to go into more detail. I believe you've received copies of this as well, previous to the Planning Commission meeting. about an accurate map of the facility, site boundary, legal description, that there be limited approval based on the legal description only that is covered, that the permitting requirements that apply at other levels are going to be preserved, and that all other licenses and permits are incorporated into the permit, that there be noticing and reporting of any regulating documents to any other entities, that those be shared with the county, that there be public safety and emergency response coordinated with the county, that there be a road maintenance agreement entered into prior to construction with Millard County to address any of the possible road degradation or deterioration that results from construction, that there be a site security plan, that the applicant assumes responsibility both during construction operation for ensuring the safety of their site and the security of their site, that there be a fire prevention program coordinated with Millard County officials, that there be reclamation, and this is, I believe, what you were touching on, Commissioner, that they will post surety, financial surety, that will ensure the removal of any of the improvements and the restoration of that, the recontouring, revegetation, and so forth.
If you did that, yes.
Post-closure. That was one of the points that was discussed as a recommended condition.
But we
That
don't have it yet.
it's,
This would be part of the permit, if we approve
Yeah.
it, they've got to do.
Okay.
if you, any of these conditions are really subject to this body, as you see fit, to determine whether there exists a need to address something, and if this appropriately addresses it, it would be included as a condition. If you don't feel that that's needful, then you're certainly able to omit any of these or all of them. So that there be warning signage around the facility, that there be insurance coverage adequate, that there would be, I'm just going to go through the minor ones, that any modifications or amendments to the permit, that they be done through our process, that the permit runs with the land, that anything that's submitted is incorporated by reference as far as other documentation, and that any inconsistencies, ambiguities run in favor of the county. The other ones that were recommended that be, that the permit be acted upon, in other words, that there be a project permitted, building permit issued prior to the end of 2027, or the approval lapses, and in the event that there needs to be an extension, that it has to be formally requested, and that will be extended for another year by the Board of County Commissioners, basically putting a sunset on this approval. If they choose not to act on it in a timely manner, that it can expire. The other conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission through discussion and through other public comment was that this project not unreasonably interfere with neighboring operations during the construction and operation, because there are adjoining operations, especially with access with rail or roadways. That the landfilling of project materials in the county landfill shall be by agreement only. Basically, they would have to coordinate with the landfill and receive permission before hauling. The amount of packaging can be quite extensive, and then if the panels were to be disposed of, that would be done, or other parts of the project, that would be coordinated with the county. Also, that there be a ground or soil stabilization plan provided. I believe that probably is covered in discussion with Aaron, that's probably covered in some of the other plans that they will already be producing. That the applicant coordinate with employees, any employee housing with the county, as far as an employee housing strategy goes, that they'd coordinate those efforts with the county. Not that they would necessarily provide it, but they would coordinate. And then lastly, any site lighting would be downward directed. And we were trying to preserve dark skies. We know that there's obviously a lot of safety concern with having dark facilities, and so it's important to have those well lit, but that we want to preserve the dark skies to the extent possible. So those were the recommendations from the Planning Commission in addition to the previous conditions. And that's...
Okay, I'm going to come back to the commission. It appears to me that the Planning Commission has done due diligence in vetting. I hope we have all the circumstances that could impact us, so I compliment the Planning Commission for their work and due diligence. Back to commissioners. Any comments, discussion, or,
We have to go out of public meeting first.
no, we're out, I think.
Oh, okay.
We're out of public, I think. Thank you.
I've got a
We're back to
question.
the commission, I think, so go ahead.
I noticed down by Milford that the weeds are kind of getting out of control, I feel like. And I know you can't let them get too tall or it'll shade the solar panels, but since this will be next to agricultural ground, it would be nice if they kept the weeds kind of under control so seeds didn't get spread around to the nearby farms.
I think they, you might come on to that. We're back in the commission, so the ones I've seen, I think they fairly
Usually
done a
they keep them
decent
pretty
job,
clean,
yeah.
but I noticed that one down
The
there.
weeds are growing over the top of the panels, huh? So,
So generally, we'll have a property maintenance plan or weed management plan that we'll follow, and oftentimes we'll coordinate with like the local wildlife agency or such for a seed mix to actually restore when we reclaim the land after construction. So weeds are generally, do you want to comment, Patrick, on weeds? But certainly it's something that we will keep apprised of and generally will treat and keep down. As you mentioned, we don't want them to get so high that they will shade the panels. And we are also aware that, fire concern certainly has increased over the years. And we don't want them to get so high that they would create a fire hazard. So certainly something that we address in our kind of operation plan for the property.
And that would also fall under the fire prevention program.
Yes.
That would be one of the listed conditions.
Yeah, weeds are a big part of that.
So I noticed Landon, if you want to come forward and make your comment concerning weeds and the question that Vicki asked, go ahead.
So I happen to represent a company that does the vegetation management. As was mentioned, they are required to have a fire mitigation, and so the current locations out there, they are supposed to keep vegetation under 14 inches. The primary reason being fire prevention. If they get too tall, yes, they could shade the panels, but the largest fear by and large is fire. And so, yes, we've used many methods. We spray herbicides, we convinced them these last several years to use sheep on the sites, as well as we do some mowing on an as-needed basis. So, yes, that is very much a hazard, but is...
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation, isn't it? Discussion, back to the commission. Discussion or possible approval.
Susan, are you good as it is, or are you wanting them to, on the, from the ACES standpoint, are you comfortable with?
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner, for asking that question. We're good as their plans are currently drawn up.
Yeah.
If there are any kind of alterations or any kind of changes, we do ask, that we be consulted. Again, it goes back to the drawing board. As is, we like it to be approved. But our concern is if there's any changes, because we have our
Yeah.
long-term plans, and we need to make sure, of course, there's a lot of infrastructure that's not negatively impacted by any kind of revisions or changes. So adopting as is good. If there's any changes, we recommend that it only be approved as it is right now. If anything else happens, we need to all sit back down and review those plans.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
And vice versa, right? I guess it's all gonna be just one friendly party out there with everybody, right? So we gotta make sure we're coordinating with everybody on both sides of the fence, right?
And under a conditional use permit, there are changes that are able to be made that are minor, but any significant changes require reopening the permit and going back through this process to determine if there's additional items that need to be addressed. So there is a formal process, and they would be apprised of each other's
So you guys will be
actions.
taking up basically every square inch of what is being permitted, right? So there's,
Under the current plan,
Under
yeah,
the current
we are
plan.
pretty built out on the property.
yeah, so it's not like
Yeah.
you can go out further unless you come back to here, right? Or
Exactly.
make changes because of, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's any significant change in the site plan, that would require coming back.
It would.
Yeah.
To the commission, further discussion, further questions? Need a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the conditional, C2 conditional use permit for application Z-2023-006
I second that
With-
motion.
With the proposed conditions?
with the proposed, yes, with the proposed conditions.
I have a motion that we approve the C2 conditional use permit as the number's been stated with the proposed conditions from the planning committee. So I have a second. Did you second it?
Yeah, I
I have
seconded
a
it.
second. Any further discussion of that? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need opening of item 1120, opening of public hearing.
I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Okay,
I
have
second that motion.
a motion and a second. Any discussion that we now are open for public hearing? Public hearing for the purpose of receiving comment on the C2 conditional use permit application Z-2023-054 for industrial manufacturing activity general at approximately 1365 North Highway 6, Delta Aries Strategic Mining Company owner. So, all in favor to open the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Confusing numbers, are we on the 006 or the 054? 06 was the solar.
5-4.
54 is Aries.
Am I wrong, or are we okay? Okay. I'm on I think I'm on 054 public hearing. Okay. Thank you very much. We're now in a public hearing. Before we enter any public comment, I'm going to turn some time over to Adam and a representative here, and they might make some comments, then we'll open up to the public.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the discussion on this project has been varied, and there's been a lot of perhaps less reliable information that's been put out at varying times just because there's been a lot of uncertainty on locations. So this project is proposing to construct and operate a fluorspar processing plant. At one time, that had been potentially sited inside the city limits, and the location that we're discussing right now, you'd be more familiar perhaps as the old cheese plant that's north of Delta.
That is outside city?
It is outside city limits. It is zoned heavy industrial, and so the use of that property for something that could be a little bit louder and more obnoxious is consistent with the zoning. And so what's being proposed is to have effectively a crusher and a pelletizer as part of that process, where materials will be brought in from the mining site, which is north of the Millard line, it's on the Juab side. They'll be hauled down into that facility, and then they would be basically crushing and pelletizing, and then they'd be shipped back out. As proposed, the project does not include any processing ponds or leaching or other processes which could be included in refining the fluorspar. At this point, it's simply, as proposed, is limited to crushing and pelletizing. So I'll defer to Shane to maybe correct and add to that.
No, that,
State your name, so we'll have it on the record.
okay. Shane Church, representing Aries today, and the owner apologized for not being able to be here. It is basically, as Adam has described it, it's just a crushing, screening plant with a screen press that they're going to basically press the water back out of it, dry the material, and then it goes out as a lump product in super bags, shipped to, I believe their target markets are going to be your steel mills, That's where the lump material gets utilized initially. Farther down the road, they will have to come back and do changes to their permitted use when they decide to do the more refined processes, which they're not applying for at this point in time. So by then, hopefully, they'll have more money, they'll have more ability, and then they'll build facilities and adopt. Most of this stuff is going to have to be done in a facility. Outdoors doesn't really work, especially during the wintertime. It's a high water process, so they can't operate during the winter without it being inside of a structure of some kind. So there's quite a bit that will take place with this as they progress, but initially it's just going to be the crushing and screening and getting the raw product out the door.
Additionally, there are not established setbacks in our industrial zones. Those are established through the permit application process. And so what has been proposed is on the last two sheets, it shows the location of the crusher, which at this time would not be enclosed in a building, and it is sited behind the existing cheese plant facility.
The building
The
itself.
building itself. So it's actually quite a bit further off of the highway, back behind.
How many acres is on that piece?
50.
Okay.
And so one of the things that would be considered would be the siting itself, the location, if those setbacks are acceptable as proposed. Typically, in your larger zones, although it might seem counterintuitive, the setbacks often are less because the types of buildings which are being built are typically non-combustible, and so they tend to be a little bit closer to the property lines on occasion, not always. The conditions that were proposed at the Planning Commission level, again, I know we're still subject to public hearing, so I'm not going to go too far, but the conditions that were proposed are starting on page 3 of 5, and it's not so dissimilar from the previous ones that were listed, in that the Planning Commission was favorable to the application, and after discussion, felt that the conditions that were suggested and discussed were adequate to address any impacts that would be likely to occur from the project. And those are listed as, starts with 1 and goes through 17. And they are largely similar, that fugitive dust control plans be established, and that traffic management, fire management, site reclamation, how they deal with construction waste and human waste, and any hazardous materials, that there be building permits issued, insurance provided, reports on file, warning signage placed as appropriate, and so forth. But those are listed on, before they were, I believe you received copies, and some of you were, I believe, even present for the discussions at the Planning Commission as those were discussed.
Okay, thank you. We are in a public hearing. We've been provided with an adequate explanation of what we're trying to do. So with the C2 permit, is there anybody in the public that has an opinion or would like to come and make a comment on this approval? Go ahead, come forward. Go ahead and state your name and make your comments.
Sheriff Jacobson, just for some clarification, Shane, what's the vehicle frequency, what size of vehicles, transport trucks are we talking about? And you're referring to a mine in a GUAB location. What is going to be the route inbound to the facility? So we kind of have an idea, public safety-wise, what kind of vehicle impact we're having here.
So initially, and this is long-term, I think that, they would be hoping to run as much as they could. I really think they're looking somewhere around 10 trucks, semis worth of material monthly, raw ore coming from the mine site, so that they're going to have to improve the road. If you go to the mine, it's actually right before you get to the brush turnoff, so you've got the paved road cleared to the brush mine, but right before you turn and head farther west, there's that intersection that heads to the north, and their mine site that they're going to claim from is at the very north end of that Spore Mountain range. So that whole route is going to have to be improved before they can bring enough traffic to matter. But the intent would be to come down Brush-Wellman Highway, hit Highway 6 and 50, and come to the cheese plant along Highway 6.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? We're in public hearing. If there are no other comments, I need a motion. Commissioner Lyman?
I make a motion that we go out of public hearing.
Commissioner Johnson, I need a second.
Thinking my questions. Second.
I have a motion and a second that we close the public hearing. No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, public hearing is closed. We're now back to the commission for discussion and possible approval of this, the C2 conditional use permit of application Z-2023-54. Discussion by the commission. Any comments, or go ahead?
I have a question, and I thought you addressed something about the noise, but it was so noisy outside that I didn't know for sure. But I just want to make sure that people that live nearby are going to be able to sleep at night. I don't know for sure what the noise regulations are.
You want to comment on them, and has it been addressed in the, it's already zoned for some, I guess, but.
It was discussed. There was not a limitation proposed or suggested on hours of operation. And they are sited fairly far away from the other properties and from the road as well. But there was not a proposed limit. Oftentimes with crushing especially, you could establish a decibel level and try to monitor that, but it's difficult to affect the noise very much. The preference, if you wanted to do it, would be to enclose it inside of a building, which I believe is their intention ultimately.
That would be good.
But that wasn't, it certainly could be a condition, but it wasn't recommended yet from the planning commission.
I just remember when they were talking about having that crusher for concrete out in Sutherland area, that we wanted to make sure that people living a certain distance away, the decibels wouldn't be over a certain amount.
I recall the discussion.
Shane, do you have any comments on what you think's going to happen?
So I mean, I think that there is one neighbor in particular that might have concern with that. As they get this operation underway, they're going to have piles of material. So one of the ways that they could help mitigate noise would be to build literally piles of material in between the crusher and as a line of sight type of a barrier. So the owners of the company have indicated that they will do everything they can to help mitigate any noise issues that do arise. But long term, I believe this is fully intended to go inside of a structure, which they do not have the money to develop at this point. But I'm assuming once they get this operation off the ground, they won't be able to run it until next spring. But once they get it up and running, I think that will change their funding status depending on the bonds that they've asked for from the state, and getting those sold, they may develop more, but that will require us coming back through this process again.
And maybe just to reiterate, under heavy industrial zoning, it is anticipated that there will be obnoxious things happening on the property. And so when those zone changes are made and the discussion is had is how impactful could activities be to surrounding properties, it's anticipated that this could be noisy and have some impact beyond the immediate property itself with standard activities that would be expected. So, not that we don't want them to be good neighbors, we expect it, but just you're going to have things that occur on heavy industrial that will be loud or noisy or dusty. And then they are responsible to do the best they can to address those.
Okay, back to the commission. Commissioners, any further questions or discussion?
My only question was the one Vicki asked. I
Okay.
think you have a house that's basically about less than a quarter mile north and south, right?
I'm not sure how close the one to the north side will be. It's going to be significantly
It'll
farther,
be
but,
twice as far as the other one.
yeah, something like that. But I think they're, I want to say it's somewhere between 300 to 500 feet is where the actual crusher would be from their property line at this point.
Okay, any further discussion? I'm looking for a recommendation.
I'd make a motion, we approve, or, yeah, there we go, make sure I'm looking at the right one. Approve, conditional use permit application Z-2023-054 with the recommended, changes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second that we approve the permit with the recommendations. Any further more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Did you vote?
I said aye.
Okay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
On the next item, public, I need a motion to open a public hearing.
I make a motion to open public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to open a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comment on C2 conditional use permit amendment application Z-2023-55 and Z-2023-056 to change the location and size of the project's terminal and associated facilities, Trans-West Express LLC applicant. Did we take a vote? All in favor of opening our public hearing indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, motion passes. We're now in a public hearing. For those that would like to comment, any of the company, and then we'll go to any other who's here would like to make a comment, go ahead and start your presentation. I guess, Susan, since you're first in line, we'll go to you again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, Susan Fernandez with ACES Delta, and we thank you for being here today. Basically, back in 2019, Magnum Development, who's ACES Delta affiliate, made comments and concerns about the interconnection line that Trans-West is proposing. Based upon how they have it written today, we have no issues with it because it goes further south than the original proposal. And by the way, I've submitted for the record this statement also via email as well. But as it supports the routing that we had concerns with, it went further south of the proposed 2019 line. We think it should get approved as it is proposed today. And we don't have any issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead and continue. Give us your comments. If you'll please state your name and go ahead and proceed.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Joe Tippett. I represent the Trans-West Express Transmission Project.
Yeah, pull the mic up there. Don't be afraid of it.
Okay, right up. Ooh, that does make a difference.
That sounds good, yeah.
Does it? Okay, my name is Joe Tippett, and I represent the Trans-West Express Transmission Line Project.
And my name is Nancy Smith, and I represent the Trans-West Transmission Line Project, and I'm Director of Compliance.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
This morning, we don't have a specific presentation to give you, Commission. We know that you're very familiar with our project, and our application that's before you today is an amendment to shift the location of the terminal station a very short distance to the east of where it had been proposed before. And that's pretty much the sum total of what the amendment entails.
Okay, maybe, Adam, let's go to you for maybe an explanation. This has gone before Planning and Zoning, and go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. So whenever there is a significant change to a conditional use permit, that's requested, it involves a formal amendment, and this is the process that we're engaged in.
So if we issued one before, and
Yes.
this is an amendment, okay.
That's correct. There's actually two separate conditions permits that have been previously issued. One is for an AC line, and one is for a DC line, and then one of those also includes the substation itself, and the grounding system is located outside of Millard County, up on the Juab side, but it anticipates that that'll be part of the process of having the substation there, and the transmission line. So the Planning Commission, considering these previously, was fairly extensive. I believe Mr. Tippett's acknowledged at some point that we probably had come up with more conditions than anybody else, so I'm not sure if we win a prize or not, but that we're perhaps...
Trust government.
We're perhaps
To make it more difficult.
hyper cautious in what might occur, and ensuring that they would be good neighbors, and they've represented that they have great desire to be such. As this has come up, one of the things that was addressed and discussed at the Planning Commission with some level of concern, the existing conditions don't anticipate any, or did not anticipate anything involving the grounding electrode. We don't have a lot of expertise in that area. The grounding electrode system itself is, and I hope that I'll receive some correction here if I misspeak, but it's used periodically when there's another problem within the system and there's a need to discharge high amounts of electricity. They've established a location and a way to do that. Historically, that Transwest has not been involved in those activities here close to us, but other power producers have, and that there had been some level of concern, particularly with the agricultural community, and more particularly the dairies, with transient voltage potentially affecting their operations and being problematic for them. Where that hadn't been anticipated or covered under the existing conditional use permits as a specific condition, the Planning Commission was comfortable with the proposed changes. They looked at the locations that were being proposed and the justification for relocating the facility, the terminus of the lines. And then they made the suggestion that language be added in as an extra condition that would help ensure that the interests of those residents of Millard County who might be affected by stray voltage or transient voltage be addressed. And so the language on that has been a little bit untimely. We've talked about it, but it's only been in the last day that we've really floated language back and forth. Commissioner Nye was probably, I don't know who was present, so we might be able to get a comment out of him, but was probably the most attuned to having accessible information that if there is activity that at least they'd be willing to share and to monitor and provide that data of what is going on the other side of the fence, so to speak, because that previously has been very difficult to obtain from other users who were using a grounding system. And Transwest to this point has been very open and willing to provide data as in that regard. And then there was some question about what could or should be done as far as the language in ensuring that if there was an issue that arises, that there be a way to address or to move forward with a plan towards addressing that. And so really that, we don't have anything that's definitive that's been agreed upon, but I believe that some of the language has been sent to you. I know I sent some emails, so I don't know if you read your emails late at night.
I actually read that one, that was in my paragraph, so.
On occasion, you get a short email. But that was really the essence of the discussion is there a way to come up with a condition or some language for a condition that ensures that there will be transparency, and then if there are issues, that those will be able to be identified, and how would that work? I'll defer to Mr. Tippett
So
to speak to
I'm
that.
sure you understand why we're sensitive to that.
Absolutely.
Do you have, and we might hear from Commissioner Knight, do you have a recommendation for us today or,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, and just to give some color on what Mr. Richens has described, this ground electrode is it's a fault system. It's put into use when other circuits go offline, and it's critical for a line like ours in order to keep and the other lines that interconnect to us. So it's a regional facility that keeps everything balanced, keeps the lights on, and it is anticipated that when the ground electrode is used, it's used from anywhere 2 minutes to under an hour tops in any one time, and no more than 30 hours a year. So that's right from our final EIS. That just gives you an idea of kind of, it's a rare occurrence that the ground electrode's used. And we have no desire whatsoever to hide the ball. We think we should all be looking at the same information, and that there's a sensitivity in the county, and we're very happy to provide whatever data the county would request relative to the use of the ground electrode facility. We're happy to share that with the county so that everybody's looking at the same information. So our recommendation would be that we have a condition added to our permit, and to clarify, this should only apply to one of the 2 permits that we're amending. One permit deals with the DC portion of our project. The other permit deals with the AC portion of our project, which is not connected to the ground electrode.
So do you have that language prepared now?
I have sent over language, yes, to Mr., would you like me to read it?
Well, what we need to do is get prepared, and that, our attorney had to leave, so I didn't mess with. And what we'd probably do is take some time to look at that language, and we're going to meet this afternoon and then come back and do final approval.
Okay.
After we have a chance to look at that language. If
Sure.
we can maybe get it to the secretary and have it printed up for us. Is that the best way to proceed?
I don't know if there might be other public comment, since I believe we're still in the public
Yeah, I know,
comment period.
we're still in public comment, so.
But certainly, I think it'd be good to look at that language and ensure that it's meeting the intent of what's desired. I took a swing at it and included some extra things as far as mitigation goes, and I believe the email that you received anticipated that if there were negative impacts, that they would be mitigated. I believe that that's the desired outcome, that someone would take responsibility and help address to the extent possible. But there was discussion of whether or not the language on the mitigation needed to be included at this point, or how that would be looked at. I believe it was somewhat of a concern to Transwest that if we obligate them without giving them due process to have that looked at carefully and vetted, that it might be actually pretty broad exposure for them that would be you'd have to use better language than I, but perhaps circumventing their regular due process they would have if there was a concern raised. So some of that language, I believe, the back and forth, it might be helpful to have some other input, but certainly I think it's just the language of that condition. I don't believe there were any other items from the previous conditional use permit conditions that were really being looked at, and then the update itself would just be the exhibit with the new legal descriptions.
Right.
John, do you have anything, John Nye, do you have anything you want to comment at this time? John is a member of our planning commission. We're in public hearing, so anybody else that would like to comment, please do.
My name is John Nye, and I own and operate with my family dairy on Jones Road. I did have quite a few notes, but I guess as thinking about it, I come down to the mitigation thing, and we had a truck at a port of entry coming into Utah a couple of weeks ago, and it had an issue, and anyway, we weren't allowed to move on until the problem was mitigated. And with air and water quality, we have any of those kind of things. If there's odors that are onerous in the neighborhood, it's expected that we're going to do something about them. And it was a long, drawn-out lawsuit that took about 15 years to resolve. And the DC voltage and the ground electrode, when the whole thing was finally over, what actually happened was really never disclosed to dairymen. But I will say that overnight, the problem stopped. I mean, we had, as we moved in here from other places, our animal performance was, now let's just dial it right down to the basics. Dead animals in a general population of cattle should run around 3%. And as a group of dairymen, we were running from 10 to 20% death loss. And we had every credible dairy expert in the United States, I think, here was trying to help us all. But to just make a very long story short, when this was all done, pretty much the problem stopped, and it was literally like turning off a switch. And we don't really know what happened. We were never told, but we're led to believe that it's in the use of the ground electrode. And I'm kind of swinging in the dark here because I don't know if it was being used a lot, all the time, not at all. I mean, I would agree with Mr. Tippett's assertion that if you're for a few minutes at a time or no more than 30 hours a year, that the negative effect should be minimal. So the word mitigation bothers me a lot because it was 15 years of very much unpleasantness that divided the community, and I say is overnight, it stopped, and it's been nice to be able to worry about the dairy business the way you're supposed to and not have that happen. And we understand that the whole power project is very important to the community and probably has made it so I would want to live here as well. But I would hope also that agriculture is important to the community. And I did visit with Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Lyman. I apologize, Mr. Johnson, I did not get the chance to visit with you. But these are my feelings as to why the mitigation thing. I guess I understand about being open to, you don't want frivolous lawsuits, you don't want just to any little thing, but if there's access to information so we can know that this has happened, and then some correlation, and then if there is a problem, it really does need to have something done about it. So I guess that's why I feel about that. We're not looking to, we want to be good neighbors, and we want you to be good neighbors as well. And that's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you want to respond, go ahead, and just anybody else that wants to respond, go ahead, Joe.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. We do not want to hide the ball. We want to share the information. I think that, as you can see, the issue here is that Commissioner and I didn't know what he was looking at because he didn't have any of the information to know how the ground electrode, when and how much the ground electrode was used. And we are very willing to share that information. Our concern with mitigation concerns bringing the question of causation into the county setting to determine whether or not we get to keep as a condition of our permit. That's a very technical, scientific question that has not yet been resolved. And Transwest is protected from speculative claims by certain evidentiary standards under the law. And once we make this a condition of the permit to make a determination on if there's causation happening that we need to mitigate for, if we bring that question into at the county level, we've made an end run around the typical evidentiary standards that would protect us from speculative claims. And so this is not a question of if we're causing something with the ground electrode, we need to be responsible to mitigate that and fix it. But giving that question of causation, taking it out of the typical legal system and putting it into the county permitting process we don't feel is appropriate, and it's a very big risk to us. That jumps out of the normal safeguards for trying to answer a scientific, technical question. So we also think that it's not necessary. The permit has a condition in it right now that allows the county to amend our permit to address any issue of public safety, health, and general welfare. And that's an authorization for any county commission. That's broad county power under the state statute. And we believe that once we've been through a process that definitively shows what's happening with the ground electrode and the kind of effect it may or may not be having in the county, that the county can appropriately respond through the permit process that's already there. And this would not jump out of the general safeguards that would be there for a company like us to deal with these very scientific and technical questions, evidentiary standards that would be required. So that's the issue on mitigation. In terms of sharing
Adam
information-
for a comment, but it seems like, the discussion's good and positive, but I'm not sure we have the language that defines the direction we're going. So at least for me to approve the permit, we need some language that explains your position and what the planning commission and where, Adam, do you have a comment? I don't know if we can
I think
come
we
up
could
with
come up with
that
some.
today, so
I think we could come up with some language pretty quickly. Perhaps, I know that there's other things that are scheduled, and there's lunch right now for some people who do that thing. But perhaps we could formulate that and come back.
Okay, let me ask, is there any other public comment? Anything else? Go ahead. Come forward, state your name.
Landon Kessler. Electricity being somewhat similar to water based on soil types and such, is there nothing that shows what the stray or transient voltage could or should be distance-wise to where, within this area around us, transient voltage should not pass X distance?
I can't answer that, I don't know.
I can, yeah, go ahead.
So yes, studies have been completed. That's where we do soil borings to understand the resistivity of the soils at depth so that we can pick the right location to minimize that absorption of the electricity that's going into the ground at depth. And these ground electrodes are 10,000 feet or deeper, so they're not near the surface.
So based on all that information, you should be able to say, based on soil types, X
Right.
information, we should not exceed X barrier.
Yeah, and those studies are ongoing
But
right
you could
now.
have that be the base standard as to distance needed from
Correct.
dairies or other locations. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, we
Thank you
do
very
have
much.
studies available, and we'll continue to have studies available as they install that ground electrode.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public that'd like to come and respond? John, you want to come back? Come on.
So the current ground electrode is located approximately 37 miles west of Delta. And the one thing that we did discover was very much as these guys are saying that the salinity in the soil is really what determines how much it seems to travel around, at least where we are. And in our spots on Jones Road is very highly saline soil, and you can drive two ground rods in the ground 20 feet apart and hook an O-meter between them, and it's almost like you have a direct connection. And during the whole litigation proceeding before, as you got to the dairies, such as the Bliss dairies that were kind of east of town and up a little bit more, they were affected less. You get to like JB Level in Oak City, where he was even farther out of the saline soils, and he wasn't bothered at all. So it does change based on where you're at. But at 37 miles away, it was an issue. It had been an issue with the gas pipeline and needing to put, some kind of a reverse current through it to help keep it from rusting away the pipeline, and the railroad had some issues with signals and things, all of which were mitigated. And there, as we go back in the conditions, we never really learned about what the real deal was, just that it had stopped. And I don't want it to start again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who wants to respond? And I'm going to entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I make a motion to close public hearing.
I second that motion.
I have a motion to second that we close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're back in board meeting. I'm going to suggest, I would like to get these done today, and I don't know, unless someone can't participate, for us to move forward, at least for me, I think we need some language that will describe both sides. So I'll suggest we're going to break for lunch here. Kayla, is that what we're doing?
Okay, so there's public hearing, and then we have the two,
Which we're not going to do.
changes. We're gonna break for lunch,
Okay.
and then come back and do the conditional use permit changes?
Yes. I would say if we can get some language, it would be my preference, if you can come up with some language, those of you participating, we can get it done. If we can't come up with some language, and our attorney will be back, he'll have to look at it then, we'll have to do it next time, so I'm hoping you can. So if that's all right, that's what we'll do is you try to get together and get us something printed that will be satisfactory. John, do you have the ability to stay and look at that, and Susan or whoever wants to be involved in that, we'll just turn that back over to you to come back and present us some language. Commissioners, is that all right?
Yep.
Okay, have your approval? Okay, under those circumstances, we will recess until 1:30? That's what we have on the agenda.
Well, we have, these are 11:35s and 11:40 items, so.
Well, those are what we're discussing right
Yeah,
now.
That's what we're doing
gonna
right
put
now.
on-
You can do.
Yeah,
them
we will take them first.
Yes.
The 11:35 and 11:40, we will come back and discuss them very first.
I'm just saying, we don't have to come straight back at 1:30. If you just wanted to break for an hour, we could come back at 1:20.
Because we could do these since we already have them on the schedule for earlier.
So we don't have to break for an hour. You want to come back at 1:15?
However long you want.
Okay, how long do you want,
That's
Commissioners?
good for me.
120.
Okay, we'll come back at 1:20. All right, we'll now call a recess till 1:20. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt all your schedules.
Any